Hello and welcome to the Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike DeLuke, and it's my mission to help you lead a happier, healthier, and more prosperous life, both personally and professionally. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Doc Podcast. If you've been following the show, you're aware that I love guests who have had interesting journeys. So I find that so many of the people with whom I speak have similar experiences and backgrounds. And sometimes it's just nice to know that you're not the only one who has faced certain challenges and struggles. It's human nature to see where people are at and convince ourselves that that's where they've always been. But all of us have a story and a journey, and success doesn't happen overnight. Instead, it's often a long, windy road full of twists, turns, and obstacles. I also believe it's learning how to navigate those very challenging situations that builds the strength and character needed to achieve great things. And my guest today exemplifies that very concept. Dr. Kalli Hale was born and raised in Anderson, Texas, where she grew up on a small farm. She did her undergraduate and master's studies at Texas A&M University and graduated from the University of Texas School of Dentistry at Houston. She comes from a family of dentists, including both of her parents, her sister, and her husband. Kalli's especially passionate about how our teeth affect our systemic health, and her training in obstructive sleep apnea has transformed both her personal and professional careers. She's a clinical advocate for Vivos Therapeutics and faculty for the Dental Success Network. She also works with dentists around the country to develop clinical protocols for the treatment of mild to moderate obstructive sleep apnea and sleep disordered breathing. Kalli's motto is, we have to stop getting it wrong in our kids, which I absolutely agree with and love. Kalli and her husband, Kyle, have 3 beautiful children, and we're also going to talk toward the end of the show about the challenges of being a busy mom and balancing her personal and professional life. So with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Kalli Hale to the Doc Podcast. Welcome to the show, Kalli.
Thank you so much. This is going to be great. It's an honor to be on here. I appreciate you having me.
I'm so happy to have you on, and really looking forward to our talk today. We're going to cover a bunch of different aspects. As I said in the lead in there, we're going to start by talking about your journey and what got you to where you are today. Then we're going to dive a little bit more into the actual place you are at today. And a lot of that's going to deal with airway and your approach and how and why that changed and how that's transformed the way you look at patient care, and contrast that with how you were trained to look at patient care. We'll talk about the challenges we're all facing, and those of us who are airway aware and believe in and know what this is doing for our patients, the challenges we're facing trying to get that message out, and then maybe some things we can do to solve it. And then we'll wrap up by getting into the heroic role that you have to play as a mom, a wife, a business owner, a lecturer. It is a lot. And I have a lot of female docs that I coach, and just knowing what it's like from seeing my wife go through it when you're dealing with all of those different aspects, it's a lot. And I really appreciate your willingness to talk to the audience about that. So
I'd love to. No problem.
Awesome. So to start out, let's hear your story. How did you get to be the Kalli Hale that you are today?
Oh, it's so nice. I appreciate the intro. It's been a wild ride, and I am honestly so grateful for the ups and downs that I had to get to where I am today. I think we can all look back and say, no regrets. What we went through molded us to who we are. My journey started a long time ago. I grew up in dentistry, just like you mentioned in my bio. I do come from a family of dentists. You should be at our Thanksgiving dinner table because it is a lot of teeth talk. And
that's one thing when we first spoke, I can relate, because we were saying, I'm like, I actually, true story. And I actually think my uncle listens to a bunch of these podcasts. I got quizzed on the facicial nerve at Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, I did. Oh, I did. My one uncle who's an oral surgeon. I literally got quizzed on the facial nerve. Yeah. Yep.
Dude, that is
true
phenomenal.
Story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm sure when my parents watch this back, they'll burst out laughing, because we have still the most colorful conversations about our practices. But in dentistry, like, those conversations have changed so much over the years. It's gone from like this specific patient or troubleshooting like a denture fit or whatever to bigger issues, and like maybe in staffing, or like, we own multiple practices, and how did we go from 1 to 7 and whatever. So we have so much. So like I said, I grew up in dentistry, but it started for me so young. I have such precious memories of my parents and our practice, our one single practice. It was called Elliott's Family Dental Center, which is my maiden name.
So mom and dad practice together in the same practice.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
cool.
Yeah. And my mom's retired. She basically raised my sisters and I, and my dad's he's a big time implant guy. He had his own course for a lot of years. He's just the GOAT, and just turned 70. He's talking about retiring. And I'm like, oh no, not until I do. If I'm there, you have to be there. But I would be the 15 or 16-year-old, or maybe younger, who knows, child labor laws, who knows, calling patients for him, saying, hey, you're due for your checkup and cleaning. I would just like get such a kick out of it. And
that's great.
Filing charts, back when we had paper charts.
Right. Yeah.
Put them in alphabetical order.
Dental family didn't file charts at one point. It's like a rite of passage.
And it was like the job nobody wanted, like of all the team members, it's like a stack of charts that have to go back. And honestly, I remember when all those started getting converted digitally, it's wild. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my dad, my parents both just had a very specific way that they wanted to run their practice. I mean, my dad started practicing before dentists were wearing gloves. Totally crazy, right? Yep. And which I can't even imagine. Like, I cannot even imagine putting my hands in your mouth without gloves on, When the AIDS epidemic hit and everything became like the sterilization program, my parents were just totally on top of it. They would give patients tours actually of our sterile labs, which we have taken, like, we just take it super seriously. We have a zero tolerance policy for that period. If anything's not clean or whatever, which you would think would be everybody, but you never know. And they would give tours of the office back then. And I remember when my dad decided, my mom actually convinced him, you need to go into implantology, because my dad was dealing with a lot of burnout, which towards the end of our podcast today, I'll talk about with the whole mom and juggling everything. But she told him, you need to go learn implants. And I think he kind of fought her on it for a little bit,
So this was like in the 90s when implants were starting to become
early 90s. Yes. Rogue, the dinosaurs of implant dentistry. Yes. My dad learned from. And so it was a 3-year residency back then. It's changed a lot since, but we were traveling to and from California, and my parents were from Texas, and they were homeschooling my sister and I, and we would just do road trips when we could go with them. Wow. And we would go to California. And we would always stay at La Quinta, which I thought was the best hotel ever as an 8-year-old kid, it had a pool. If it had a pool, we were golden, and now I'm like, I stayed at La Quinta. I was like, oh, no shame, I'll stay at La Quinta again, which maybe, whatever, no shame to La Quinta. This is just a long time ago. Yep. And anyway, I remember
that's another hotel industry has also changed quite a bit over the years.
It has. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're very picky about hotels now. My husband would burst out laughing when he listens to this, because he knows what it's like to be married to me. And I'm like, oh, we're not staying there. But anyways, I remember watching my dad learn to suture on a queen bed in a La Quinta hotel.
No way.
Early 90s, he was sitting there with strings and stuff. And now he's got this incredible sutures lecture. Not to pitch him. I don't even know if he does them anymore, but I'm like, you want to learn a suture? That guy can teach you to suture.
Does he tell people he was practicing it in a La Quinta?
I have no idea. I don't know. But once he hears this, he'll probably start, if he knows it's a core memory for me, Wow. And then time went on, and I'm a kid, and we're just growing up, and we lived out in the country, and our practice was in Houston. He was commuting 100 miles one way for 11 years, which was absolutely crazy. Yes. Now
that's a drive I do to Nova to teach. And I mean, a few times a month,
11 years, 11 years
daily for 11 years. That's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was absolutely crazy. And he did he got an associate at some point in there, so he could have like a few limited days, more limited days. But that was the office that I grew up in, that I remember. We still own it. We have an incredible partner in that location. And we did change the name to accommodate the second practice that we bought at that time, so that they were both named the same. It's my baby of a practice. It's my heart and my airway practice. But it was really crazy. It was such a fun journey for me. So then, I went off to college, and I kind of a side personal note, I was a very competitive piano player growing up. That was actually what I thought I wanted to do for a living. We toured Juilliard, actually, and I went to the Rice School of Music when I was a teenager, but way before college. Wow. And I really had long conversations, very, very important conversations with my parents as I was getting to the point of deciding what I wanted to do for my life, and ultimately, I wanted to be able to take care of myself no matter what. And Kyle, my husband, and I were dating in high school. So like we we're high school sweethearts, and I knew that we were going to get married. I was just madly in love with him, but we needed to grow up and we needed to become, something to be able to support our family. And
now,
I just knew that
was he thinking dentistry back in high school?
He was actually, no, he's from a family of engineers, and he's a very engineer mind, which actually makes for a great dentist.
Oh, some of the best dentists I know are engineers. In my residency, we had some engineering minds, and they're very, very talented.
They just understand how things work in a way that like a piano player doesn't really always understand. So
that must be a nice compliment to have the artistic dexterity.
I think it's fabulous.
With his engineering analytical mind. That's a pretty cool combination.
I mean, he does surgery and implants, and I make people's teeth look beautiful. So for me, it just it worked out really well. So it was really wild. So he and my dad have always been very close, even as the boy dating your daughter when he was in high school. And my dad very much influenced his decision in moving to dentistry, and had him come and kind of work over the summers in the practice, and just to really see what, like, my dad's like such a stud and has so much fun. And Kyle is like, all these people like him. He's got all these like nice women working for him in an air conditioned office. And so anyways, it's just so funny. It worked out that way. And Kyle and I look back on those years of our education very fondly, because we sacrificed a lot. I would say anybody listening to this that went into medicine or dentistry, did a residency, whatever, your friends are all moving on with their life, and all your 20s are in school. And for us, it was that way too. And we waited to have a family until we could afford one. We waited to have a family until we could, I wanted a nanny, and I wanted a very specific, like, you just set goals for yourself and you try to meet those best you can. And so, it was a wonderful, wonderful journey for me. And then when I got out of dental school, I didn't know what sleep apnea was. I think we had one lunch and learn one time on sleep apnea. Like, it was not discussed at all.
You were done in the early teens?
I started in 2010. Yeah. I graduated in 2014, but throughout all that 4 years, it was, there's a lot you got to learn. You got to come out being a general dentist, which means you're expected to do pretty much everything in dentistry, which is, I think, very, very difficult, which influenced my decision tremendously to branch off into ortho and sleep only, because I wanted to be the best at that. And I can't, if I'm trying to do a root canal in the next operatory while you got an expander in your mouth over here, like, that just doesn't work well.
I don't even know how someone, I mean, I know people do it and that can be done, but I think that's a really profound insight into that challenge, because I did some general dentistry part-time at my family's dental practice while I was a resident, moonlighting. And it's hard. It's hard work.
Your brain is just,
and it's so different from what, I'd go back to UConn and be an orthodontist all week. And to mix those in one practice, I got to be really, really challenging.
Sure. It definitely was. And that's part of the burnout story that I have towards the end of this too, as I was making that decision. How do you decide to stop doing the bread and butter part of your practice?
Sure, that's hard.
And specify it, specialize in it. So for me, I got out of school. I actually did the maxi course for implantology that my dad was, he had his own course for, because I just wanted to be whatever they were. I was like, my dad was just awesome. And my parents really figured out ways to communicate with people, which I think is everything. If you are in dentistry and you can't have a conversation with somebody and relate to them on a level to get their trust, you're going to struggle. It's just harder. And that was so much more of my getting out of school. Okay, you know how to fill teeth now, but like, how do you actually talk to somebody? Like, how do you get them to say yes and pay you a lot of money for something, And shadowing my dad and growing up, and that really helped me. So I started placing implants. I was taking all the courses and doing the exams and doing all that cool stuff. And it just was great. And I could do it, but it wasn't what got me out of bed in the morning. It really wasn't. And I started researching all sorts of stuff. My younger sister, who I said is a dentist, is a heavily trained biologic dentist. So she's always talking about materials and what we should use and all the, like, I always tell her the biomaterial, like what? Like I hated that class. Like, what are you telling me right now? And so that part really exploded my journey of just like thinking outside of the box, and how can we make sure whatever I'm putting in your mouth is doing something good for you at the same time. And that really exploded the popularity of our practice, because I was just really open to talk to these moms who had researched something and had nobody to ask about it. And I would tell dentists, like, oil pulling, for example, it's a lot more popular now. I think it's a lot more accepted now, but 10 years ago it wasn't.
Right.
And I would tell doctors that were like so hesitant to even talk about it. I was like, listen, the only person that looks dumb in the operatory in that moment that doesn't know about it is you.
Right.
So like, go look into it. See, look up charcoal toothpaste, come up with your own opinion on like what, if you think it's beneficial for the patient or not.
Just be educated on it. Yeah. Don't
just be educated
put
on it.
Put a wall up towards the conversation. That's a great point.
Yeah, and because then the moms are just like defeated, they feel attacked, like whatever the situation is, and they truly just want whatever's best for their kids. So I literally have the best patience because I had these families that really cared about their health and wanted to know, how can I make my child healthy? Decay is not normal. Decay is a massive problem. And why is that happening? And so anyways, I just had a reputation for like, yeah, you can ask me anything. Let's talk about it. Let's try to figure it out. And I'm not going to like yell at you or tell you you're stupid, you know? And somewhere in there, I got wind of sleep apnea and I started screening for it. And I didn't even have any of my own sleep test machines or anything like that. But I would use a company that would mail it to the patient or whatever. And adults, you know, nothing with kids. This was way pre kids in me. And I started catching obstructive sleep apnea in patients that were grinding and had abfraction lesions and maybe had their bicuspids out or whatever the situation is. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, they're saying that some of this stuff can be linked, and here I am finding it. I literally have sleep tested every single bruxing patient that has come in to talk to me, and I have never not caught sleep apnea in a bruxing patient. And now it's really common, and they're putting in the literature. It's like, oh yeah, it's a symptom of like them trying to get better air. But before, people were arguing about it. It was like, oh no, just give them a night guard or whatever. So it's been kind of crazy to be in dentistry for a decade and just kind of see how the narratives are changing in a good way, though, you know, from what I was taught in school.
Yeah. And I have a lot of people who listen to the show who are also lay people and parents and not in the professions. Those in the professions will clearly be able to relate to what you just said and how difficult that journey is. But those who aren't, what Kalli just explained, it's not easy. I mean, you went through in the early part of your career, you come out, you're not super confident in your skills, not saying you as in you, Kalli, but you, any dentist who comes out, you just aren't. Like, you know, you've always had someone there to watch over you. You've always had a faculty member to turn to. You've been our hands get held pretty tightly when we're in those institutions. And understandably so, right? I mean, they have to make sure we're competent and able to practice. That being said, when you get out, the old kind of cliche at this point, but it's called practice for a reason. I mean, you are literally
100%
figure this out. And I look at how I practiced. I just did a webinar for Airway Health Solutions the other day, and I was actually showing some cases from my residency in the beginning of my career where I had no idea about airway, where I had no idea about growth and development. And I just treated the teeth. I didn't look at anything but the teeth because that's what we were taught. And I look at where that was, and I mean, I'm ashamed of the way those cases turned out. And then I look at how I evolved over the past 20 years and that process. That's one thing that I hope everyone can understand just how challenging that is and how much credit you deserve for that, because a lot of people get out and they just do what they taught. They kind of want the easiest
100%.
And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just when you get out, as we're going to talk about later in the show, you start having a family, you start wanting to have a house, settle down, you know, as you alluded to.
You're juggling so much.
I mean, we get out and as you alluded to very accurately, we put our lives on hold for years to go down this educational path where I can remember my friends and buddies from Villanova. I was in dental school on Long Island at Stony Brook, and you know, they'd be calling me up and like, hey, come on, we got a party at this club in New York. I'm like, I'm studying. I got a huge exam Monday morning. Like, we don't live the life they live. And so we get out and we're kind of like, well, now I want to enjoy some of the fruits of my labor. And when you start to do that, it can get very easy to just keep doing what you do day in and day out and fall into that path of, this is how I'm trained, this is what I learned, and this is what I'm going to do. And the fact that you, early in your career, when you're still figuring it all out, we're always asking questions. And I love what you said about being a communicator. Instant thought that came to my mind, Dr. Waldman, he's still publishing. Barry Waldman from Stony Brook. I don't know how old he is now.
I was going to say.
He had to be, I mean, I think he was in his 70s when he's got to be 90. I mean, he's got to be. He publishes a lot on the public health side of dentistry and really interesting guy. He used to say, you make more money with your mouth than your hands. And
I love that.
The reason in his dental student, you're kind of thinking everything you're doing is about your hands. And he said, his point was, if you can't talk to a patient and communicate, if you don't listen to your patients and then educate them, and that is something I'm so big on, then it doesn't matter how good you are at the dentistry. It doesn't matter. You can be
They won't keep coming back to you.
They won't. And I actually work with the residents I teach and coach on that, about how to talk to the parents, how to talk to the patients. Good job. Because we're just not taught that. I mean, you would like to think that everyone knows that, but you don't. And so that's a huge point. And I think that open-mindedness, that communication, that open-mindedness that you were talking about, that is what let you constantly question it. So as you're questioning this and you're going through this sort of first 5 years of your practice life, how did you decide that you were going to go all in? And then what prompted you, outside of the sleep studies and what you're seeing with adults, to then extrapolate that to the kiddos and start to look at how you could start to make a difference in the lives of children through the airway side?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. We all know that we don't learn much about interceptive orthodontic treatment, especially as it pertains to airway. That's why I created a comprehensive CE course that you can access through the doc website. This 26-hour course will transform how you think about and approach interceptive treatment and teach you how to implement airway-focused orthodontic treatment into your practice. Just go to theorthocoach.com and click on the courses dropdown. I'll also put a link to it in the show notes for today's episode. If you're looking for ways to improve the health and truly change the lives of your young patients, then this course is for you. And now back to today's episode.
So, here I am getting sleep studies in, not knowing a thing about it. Didn't have a physician on earth I collaborated with at that point. I'm just a little general dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And
this
I would
is
just tell them,
like 5 years ago from where we are in 2024.
Yeah, 6 or 7 probably, because
okay.
I'm not even I had some time in there where I did the training and I was like, I'm all in, which I'll get to. But I'm sending them back to their phphysicians and they're getting CPAPs and then they're hating them and they're, thanks, but no thanks kind of thing back to me. And I was sitting in my room in my office at work, and my dad was in there with me, obviously. And I just started getting online to see what people were saying about some of the various training courses.
Okay.
And one of them was obviously Vivos Therapeutics, which is the first thing I did. I have subsequently done many others since, but and I fought it tooth and nail. I was like, there is no way this is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I for months, I would tell my dad, I can't even believe people are saying this. And I totally attribute it. He put me in my place. He finally one day was like, Kalli, if this is possible, and if this is where dentistry is going, you need to go figure it out.
Huh, interesting.
And he was not going to, I think he got so sick of me talking about something I didn't know anything about and having an opinion on it when I'm literally nobody. Who am I to have opinion on anything orthodontic at that point? Mm-hmm. And they were doing these seminars in various cities, various large cities, and obviously Houston's a big one. And they were coming to Houston, a group of docs that were speakers for Vivos at the time and showing cases. And they filled up a hotel auditorium in Houston, and it was free to go. And so I'm like, all right, never a better time. And man, let me tell you, I sat on the front row. I had my pen and my thing, and I was ready. I was ready to argue every point. And the more the day went on and the more cases I saw, that's what I needed. I had heard great testimonials. I had seen all that. I figured you could pay for those, whatever. Right. To me, I needed to see before and after cone beams, honestly, and knowing that the teeth were safe and whatever the situation was. And I was like, I have to do this. It was like a moment where I was like, how dare me have an opinion on something I don't know anything about? Mm-hmm. And that's what gets me so fired up online. You and I chatted briefly before this of just the things people will say in these dental groups when they haven't even taken a sleep course ever. They're not qualified truly to even have a conversation about it. But yet they're tainting the reputation of airway dentistry and ortho, just easily, because other people that are scared, this is a scary thing. The first time you ever do it, it is one of those things where I had a dentist that I mentor call me and be like, my hands were shaking as I was gluing in the expander. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you, And he's like, I've done big surgery. This is nothing. Why was I so nervous, putting this in?
Yeah.
So anyways,
I hear that all the time, by the way, all the time. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And even residents, just so you know, when orthodontic residents put their first appliances in, when I'm teaching residents, and whether it's the first herps, the first expand, whatever it is, when you start putting those on the first brackets, their hand, it's totally normal that you're a little jittery with that. Yep.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Totally normal. And you just really need a mentor or somebody to get you out of that, which is what I love doing. I love mentoring this dentist and just telling him you can do this. Here's how you have the conversation. But so as that's all happening, my focus when I was doing these sleep courses was to treat adults. I was so blinded to the fact that this was something we could prevent by getting in early with kids. I had no idea. And that's when I started taking some courses at Airway Health Solutions. And obviously at Vivos, I met Dr. Ben Moralia through that. We were talking earlier, and I saw his cases from ages of 3 to teenage. And I'm like, wait, this is a thing. I'm like, and then I'm mad because I spent $250,000 on my education. And the biggest thing I got out of pedo was I didn't want to treat kids. I didn't want to give them a
Yeah.
shot and how to
Boy,
do freaking
for all the people
sealants.
I've had say exactly those words to me about once they have that epiphany, how they're first, it's like the stages of grief. I mean, anger
It is.
is right there, and
It
I
is.
hear that often.
Yeah. And for me, going back to what you said earlier, which I think is so profound on who you are as a person, for you to be able to go back and look at ortho cases and you're like, I wouldn't do it this way now. I don't
Yeah.
like this. I feel like this was a bad outcome for that patient. Same,
Mm-hmm.
same. I have done things like, obviously for me, I want expansion before we pull a permanent tooth. And any
Mm-hmm.
way we can help before we do that. I
Mm-hmm.
pulled tons of eyes. I pulled eyes all the time when I
Mm-hmm.
got out because I was just asked to do so. I
Yep.
just
Yep.
do it, and
Yep.
it's like, that wasn't where my head was at the time to challenge any of that, or just
Yeah.
think about it and see what we can do. And so anyways, it was just, that's huge on you because that's unique. And I think truly some of the pushback that happens, I have a lot of patience and grace for those doctors because I think it's really hard to admit you did something wrong because you don't want to think you've ever hurt anybody. Nobody
Yes.
wants to think that
Yes. That's
when
so
it comes
true.
to
That's
any
so
any
true.
aspect of dentistry. And
Yeah.
so I'm like,
Yeah. We all want to do, we go into this to
yes,
help people. Like
yes,
people don't go into dentistry to think like, hey, I want to like harm some people here. I mean,
no,
it's just not what it is.
yeah,
That's such a great point because the more I'm going down this path and having guests such as yourself that I get to know and speak with who are really knowledgeable on this and have met a lot of other people, that is a recurring theme that
yeah,
comes up. I just had David
totally.
McIntosh on last week's episode, and we were talking about exactly this thing, and multiple people we have. The fact that the psychosocial emotional side of this,
Oh, it's huge.
and I love that you said have some grace because I actually said that in the Airway Health Solutions webinar the other day at the end when Lauren kind of asked me to wrap up and summarize things, and I said I think we would really all benefit from just showing a little grace towards our colleagues.
Yep.
And yes, there are those naysayers who are I'll say the word ignorant completely that are
Yep.
out there just trying to scare people
Totally.
because they're scared.
For sure.
So, I mean,
Yes.
people who scare other people are often scared themselves. So,
Yes.
most people, if you are not scared of something or fearful of it, you will be open to talking about it, hearing about it. Censorship and shutting down people's speech and ideas comes from a place of fear. So,
Yeah.
you've got those people. But even those people, right, who have said some really nasty things to me and been really, really hard on me, I extend grace to them because of
Totally.
what you just said. They're scared because they don't want to look back at their life body of work and
Yep.
think that they have hurt and damaged the health of
And
these
maybe their own
patients
kids.
and maybe their own kids, their own significant others, that
Totally.
whatever, their nieces,
Totally.
nephews. I mean, I treated,
Yes.
I can't even count how many family members I treated
Yeah, I know.
and dear friends, children of dear
Yep.
friends. I mean, I
Right.
can't, I think about those cases that I showed from 20 years ago when I didn't know better. And when I was putting that together, because Lauren had asked for being Orthodontic Health Month and Dental Hygiene Month, maybe we should talk about like the diagnostic side and all that. So that was really
Totally.
the point of it, was to kind of talk about how do we diagnose and what are we looking for? And I thought, well, what better way to show a airway growth development minded focus than to show what happens when you don't have one?
Right. Absolutely.
I hadn't looked at those cases in a while. And Kalli, when I was putting them together, I mean, my stomach was churning. I'm going, like to the point that you're just going, oh my gosh. So if that was me, and I literally had to struggle, I had to pull one from my residency, and I had one I could find in private practice. I'm sure there's one or two more, but
sure.
because I didn't do that and I started very early taking a growth and development centered approach to my patients.
Thank goodness.
Thank God I don't have many, but even that few of a number of cases left me with that feeling. Now multiply that by like thousands, tens of
decade
thousands.
of your career. Yeah.
Or 20 or 30 years
20,
of a career.
Yes.
So it's rare I see a young doc with an open mind who sees what you saw. In other words, a Kalli Hale in another, whether it's a GP, pediatric dentist, orthodontist, when they're exposed to this. I teach a lot of residents this content. I've not had one come to me and say, I don't believe what you're showing me. I've had some say, show me more. I want to learn more. I want, prove it more. But once they see it, everybody literally says the same thing to me. Why aren't we learning this? Right. Why aren't we learning this? And so the young docs get it. I really think what's the difference between the young docs and the older docs? Who are the young docs open to it and willing to change? The older docs aren't. Exactly what you said.
Exactly. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have always said there is no profession more qualified to be doing what I'm doing than orthodontist.
I completely agree. Yes.
As I,
Yeah.
and I mean, again, going back to me learning about this stuff in pedo and ortho, I'm like, I don't have a clue. I didn't even know there was controversy. I didn't even know this wasn't something that they did. I'm just like, I had referred everything and now I want to do it. And then I had a meeting with a guy local one time. And I just immediately knew he wanted nothing to do with what I was saying.
This is
I'm like, look at these.
this is an orthodontist.
Yeah, it's the guy I was referring to for a long time. I don't anymore. I don't think he sent me anybody for a long time either. But it was just one of those things where I'm so excited. And I think my advice to anybody that's starting this is don't go have a meeting before you've got cases. Don't go try to do what I did out of excitement. Like, you're never going to believe what I've learned, because they're like, this isn't a thing, because I didn't learn. They're saying this isn't a thing because I never learned this.
Interesting.
So what the heck would Kalli know? So I'm like, I got to get 1,000 cases under my belt, and then I'm gonna have more conversations, and then I'm gonna get loud on social media, and then I'm gonna tell parents. Because I didn't have any of that yet.
Because I get that a lot. I get a lot of docs I train and are new at this say the parents are asking them questions. I'm actually working on building some content towards that. Yes, okay, you have 1,000 cases there now, and I love that you really mastered the technique and the approach to be able to go stand on that ground. When those first 100, 200 patients are coming in and saying to you, Dr. Hale, like everyone else is telling me this isn't a thing, and there's not much online about it, because back then time there really wasn't. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I think, having the clientele that I did and the trust that I already had with my patients, I've always been told, I can really feel your passion for this. Dude, I get so excited when I'm in the operatory. When a parent comes in, like, now most of it's all referrals, but before it was just brand new people that they'd been getting their teeth cleaned with me for, a long time. And now I'm like, you will never believe what I'm learning. We can actually make a difference right now that may change what kind of ortho they even need as a teenager, if any. And
there's
I'm just like in there, and I'm like, yes,
right?
It goes back to the communication.
Right? Yeah.
I did 200. When I finished the education program in Colorado with Vivos, took me about 6-7 months flying back and forth with a newborn baby and the whole thing.
Oh my gosh,
it was the beginning of 2019, and I was like, I've got to do this with like everything in me. And I did 250 cases the first year. I mean, I just couldn't stop talking about it.
Wow.
And then I was like, I need help. I need other dentists. Like, I was like, wait a second. Now I have a chair time problem, and I'm trying to fill teeth at the same time. And so I have told these patients that are still patients of the practice, their treatment's been finished for years. And I'm like, I am so grateful for you letting me do this, because and I'm like, why did you let me do this? But I was also very forthcoming about that. I just finished an awesome residency program. I'm super excited. Let me tell you what I've learned. Like, I would love to offer this to your kid. And the families don't know what we know. They're not in the dental group. They don't have a clue. They're just like, oh, you think this would be beneficial? Like, if I trust you, and I know that these little habit corrector appliances can't really hurt them, like, why wouldn't we try it if there's been, and I had some before and after cases from the training, which was really helpful. That's another thing. And doctors are like, I don't even have anything to show them.
That's a big one I hear too.
Possible. Yes. And so I will usually, I'm like, send them to my Instagram page if you want to, or go on the Tooth Pillow website. Now there's like so many things where we can show like cases and function over years and what they look like. Anyway, I'm forever grateful for that, especially the adults that let me do expansion on them as well, because that was a whole blue ocean thing, man. Non-surgical, like, oh my gosh, the dagger that was on my back. But then I started presenting and writing case reports for the American Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine to say, like, hey, y'all, I know we love mandibular advancement devices. That's like what the whole group is about. But like, we should be talking about ortho. Look at this guy that I took from severe to mild OSA. Like, this is great, And so, I don't know. The answer to that, I think, would be communication.
And passion, I would say, just hearing you speak.
Definitely.
And I used to hear that from my patients is they would say, because I had to go through a transition where I wasn't trained in this. So I was first putting these upper and lower expanders in patients, and they're thinking, what is this guy doing? I went to a town where it was really predominantly older orthodontist extraction approach, the old style of ortho. And so I'm this new guy kind of trying this new technique. So I faced those questions with it. And then when I also changed about 5 years into doing it less with the turnkey expanders and more with braces and wires instead, I had to go through that again. And a lot of times parents would say to me, your passion for this
Yes, I hear it
helps
a lot
us.
too. Yeah.
And because I was genuinely excited, my
Totally.
TCs would come into
Yes.
the consult where we had a whole system where we would do the records and I would review it and they would come meet with me before I went in the room. And they would be like, I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this patient, or, oh my God,
I
I
know.
am so excited to see how you help her. Look, her poor
Oh,
little face. Like
yeah.
they see it. And,
Yes.
then you'd go in and do this. And I still, when I teach the residents, and I just get so excited about this. And interestingly, David McIntosh, who's an ENT in Australia,
Yes,
brilliant
I'm
guy.
familiar. Yes.
He
Awesome.
said it as well before I even did. And that is, straight teeth are great. And I always say for myself, I've been blessed to have really done some beautiful orthodontic work and created some amazing smiles. None of that compares to when you save a kiddo's health, life,
Oh my gosh.
well-being, family,
It makes me
and
emotional.
right.
Absolutely.
And the parents are like in tears and
Yep.
there's a feeling you get. And again, on the grace side, I've said to a lot of my colleagues who make a lot of disparaging remarks about what we're doing here. I've said to them, I feel, and I don't mean this in a flippant way. I literally say, I actually feel sorry that you've never gotten to experience that,
I
because
know. I know.
it really, being a tooth straightener is rewarding and you can do a lot of great things for patients to make them look better. I'm not minimizing it. It's awesome. It's why I went into the profession.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
That being said, there is another level. So talk to me a little bit about that connection, that as you started seeing this happen in your patients, what were they saying to you? What were they?
It was just wild. I mean, I never thought I would get a 10-year-old boy to stop bedwetting. Like I work up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And things like that where the parents are just like forever grateful and
Forever
hugging
grateful.
you.
Yep.
And like they can't stop talking about. I mean, 50% of our new patients per month for the last, like, I don't know, 8 years have been word of mouth. That's a
completely.
huge percentage.
Yeah.
A huge percentage
Yeah.
for most, I would say, family dental offices. And even on the adult side, like for me, the first severe sleep apnea case that I took on, expansion case, I was the one not sleeping at night. I'm like, are these guys' teeth gonna fall out? I don't know what's going, you're just all the things that you battle with at night. And his apnea score was 47. So he stopped breathing 47 times an hour, and he was on a CPAP. And I was very, carefully just inserting myself into the orthodontic part of his care, but obviously in a collaborative approach with his physician. And when we were done as AH, I was 9.
Wow.
Like it was so wild to me. I burst into tears when, honestly, he went in lab for his studies, and I was like, I am so scared, because what if it's worse? Who knows? What if it didn't work at all? What if it didn't work at all?
I'm so happy you're saying this, because there's so many people out there who have these same fears and anxieties. And so thank you for your honesty on this.
Of course. I mean, this is real life. We're regular people that just really want to help people,
Yeah.
And I will literally never forget when his sleep study got faxed to us, because my office manager was running down the hallway, because they're all paying attention.
Yes.
But whether we want them to be or not, and like some of the nuances, like they know what's going on. Your staff
it's like your kids. Whether they
absolutely,
they know whether you think it or not. They know.
And I just could not believe it. And this particular patient still comes in and gets a teeth clean every 6 months, and I take pictures of his teeth every time he comes in. He's probably like, "You are such a weirdo," But I'm just like, everything's stable because your muscles are functioning the way they're supposed to, and he's just. I was just really grateful for that. So as these things were happening slowly but surely, it was the staff involvement that you mentioned was like unbelievable.
Yes.
Like my husband has told me before, he goes, we have multiple practices or whatever. And he's like, your team has your back like you have no idea, Kalli. He's like, they would literally like go play in traffic for you if you told them to. He was like, they will defend you to the death, and I'm forever grateful for all of them. There's days I'm like, I don't even deserve the kind of loyalty you guys give me. Like, this is awesome. Crazy. And they will manage my patients for me when I'm not there in ways that I don't have to worry about things. And I've trained my airway assistants to understand what we're doing with the appliances. This is not brain surgery. This is not rocket science.
No.
Like, I'm going to teach you what to look for so you can tell the parents what's going on anytime I'm not there. And it's been a wild journey, man. It's been awesome.
Well, it's a tribute to your leadership as well. You don't get a team like that without having great leadership, and clearly your passion and ability to communicate. These are common themes, and you're constantly pursuing a higher level. What about the colleagues who are scared to try this? And I mean that for orthodontists, general dentists, pediatric dentists. What is your advice to those who are very skeptical? Because you were, I believed nothing about this. I literally,
I love
people
your
don't realize
story
that about
so
me, but
much.
I
Yeah.
believed nothing about this. I thought it was quackery. We're taught that literally, Ortho Tongue K put an article in the 90s in the AJODO that anybody who does anything with just early treatment, not even the A word, as I call it, airway, just early treatment is a quack. So he's
Charlatans. Yep.
charlatans, quacks. I mean, he quotes the medical literature and the history of the word quack. And I mean, it's out of control. And this is what our leading journal puts out. He's I believe, a past president of the AAO. So, I mean, this is a high thought leader within our profession, an educator. And so when a lot of people are intimidated by that, a lot of people are scared by the literature, which I've broken down in this show and in my content many times about phase 1 doesn't work and early treatment doesn't work. And I can break all those articles down into why they're really, really poor studies because they're done really without standardization, without standard protocols, without even looking at the mandibular arch. I mean, we could go on and on. But there's a lot of people that hear that and they believe it. And they hear that, and they may hear your story or my story, or Kristen's story. We were talking about Kristen Necht, and we were saying that her story of just what she went through, and you guys near one another, those people all went on a similar journey, and we all had to face our fears and overcome a lot of obstacles. And I meet with a lot of docs and coach a lot of docs who are where you are. You know, they understand this. And I coach a lot who are brand new and they're just trying to figure this all out. But there's that middle group that they're dipping their toe in the water. They're sensing there's something here. They're sensing there's something to this, but they're seeing all the hate online and they're seeing all these people instilling fear. And they're hesitant. They might be a solo practitioner out there. Maybe they work with a senior doc who is one of those people who's very skeptical of this.
That's even harder. Oh my gosh.
Right. So what do you say to those people?
You know, I really just encourage them to show up at some of the meetings now. I'm like, you know, the best thing you can do for yourself, the best thing you can do to make your own professional opinion on where you want to stand in this is to come see cases and come be at these meetings and hang out with the docs that are in the trenches doing it. Because I felt like that's what I needed. I needed to know that, oh, people really are doing this. And well, I don't want to be left in the dust. I don't want to be the one that's like, I'm so thankful now that I've done as much as I have in the last decade instead of just now when it's, I think, the most popular, like this year. Oh, okay, now I'm going to get into it. You know, like I wanted to help as many people before that. And I think the more cases you can see and more that you can show up at some of the meetings. The ADSM is a great organization. They had a whole pediatric debate last year. I was up in front of the mic a bunch of times.
Which I want to come back in a second to the ADSM position statement because I face a lot of challenges with that too, which I don't disagree with it, but anyway, but continue.
Yeah. So, and just immersing yourself in some of what we're doing so that you can ask questions, because if all you're going to do is read comments online by people that have never even taken a sleep course, you're doing yourself a disservice and your patients a big disservice. And so I would say, just start getting articles, start reading stuff, follow McIntosh, look at everything that he posts online. I literally print them all out all the time and read them. It's like, it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the fear of liability? Because I hear a lot of people who are scared. We have a lot of people in the orthodontic community who are thought leaders that will say things like, this isn't the standard of care. I've heard one guy on a podcast, I couldn't believe it, one of my ortho colleagues say, if there's any lawyers out there listening, I would strongly suggest you start looking into orthodontists or anyone, dentists treating kids under the age of 7. Actual quote. So I won't name names, but
oh my gosh.
And he's not a nobody in the field.
My blood pressure.
Yeah, he's not a nobody in the field. He lectures at the AAO. He's got a pretty prominent position. And again, my intent in any of this isn't to smear individuals. It's just to call attention to the reality that's out there. So this is what they're hearing. And a lot of them hear your story and my story, as I said, but then they hear that and they're scared they're going to get sued. You know, that one case with the AGA appliance. There's people doing anything in our line of dentistry that do things that aren't right, whether it's a bad crown or a bad, or a bad denture. I mean, this was a bad case. It was a bad outcome. Right. And so, but they take that and that they literally extrapolate it and say, there's no difference in doing that, which was on an adult patient. And again, don't know about the case specifically, but seemed to be not managed properly. And they say, well, that's no different than doing this on a young child and helping a younger child because there's no evidence and no data. Now I put the data out there. I have it on my website. I have a content linked on my website, my YouTube page. I have all these things where I put it out there and I'll put people to that. And then those people just say, oh, you're just trying to promote your own content. You know,
oh my gosh.
So you can't win.
We'll say, hey, you can lead a horse to water, man. That's what I say too. I'm like, there's going to be people that we can influence. And then there's going to be ones we cannot.
But my concern more is the ones that listen to them, because they have, these other docs are fearful that these people are going to, I mean, there's even been situations where these people are targeting. I know specific examples where some of these people in the orthodontic establishment are targeting doctors,
oh my God,
orthos and non-orthos, doing this in their community. And it's real. And so how can you, with your passion, with your ability to communicate, what do you say to those doctors, which I know there are a good number listening, who are in that position, who are feeling this, their gut is do it, but their mind is, man, and I'm not even talking about the side of like the logistics of implementing change in your practice. I mean, that's a whole nother area of challenge. This is just the philosophical side, the emotional, psychosocial side. What can you say to inspire those doctors?
I mean, for me, it's just, I wanted to pick, when I was doing this stuff in kids, adults aside from the whole AGA thing, that I was not going to do any harm. And I need them to know that they're not going to do any harm. When we're talking about habit corrector appliances, myofunctional therapy, letting the body's natural ability to breathe through their nose start happening, that is when you start seeing the arches align and the teeth get straighter. And I want them to know that they're not going to hurt anybody. But I also want them to know you need to know what you're doing. Right. At the same time, like, and taking the courses and learning from the people who have been doing this, so that you have a very specific set of rules and goals and limitations. And you're not doing this on kids that are too old for it, whatever. You're like, who's going to sue you at that point? Like what bad is going to happen when you have a happy patient? Do you think?
And what are they suing you for? It's not negligence. It's not negligence. You don't get sued for, I mean, the only time you're sued for being outside of the standard of care is when you've provided substandard treatment that caused harm in some capacity. People, I mean, physicians are prescribing off-label drugs all the time. And I mean, people practice outside of the quote unquote standard of care. Standard of care, I had a lawyer on my show who's also an orthodontist, Eric Plumas, a year ago, and we went into this in great detail. I can put a link in this episode. Awesome. And he talks about the standard of care is a legal definition. It's not actually, it is what would a reasonable group of people feel should be done in a similar situation. It is not a playbook or you need to do A, B, C, D, E. And if you don't do A, B, C, D, E, you are negligent. That's not what it is. So these people use the language of standard of care to intimidate
improperly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unacceptable. And I think, again, it stems back from the fear mongering that's happening around this. And I think if you understand that you're not going to hurt anybody and you have somebody to lean on to ask questions to, that's really important too. And I think anybody that's going out of their way to try to hurt another dentist who they have no clue who that person is or what they're doing or what their cases are or anything, I have zero respect for at the same time, because I'm like, okay, I can defend myself, like no problem. I've got all the records that I need for these cases, but you're not going to hurt anybody doing this. So just again, I can't imagine what patient of yours is going to be, oh yeah, I want to see you for the fact that my kid isn't bed wet anymore. Like, I don't understand. There's nothing to stand on for that. And I think he's just using a loud voice to support his own misinformed cause. And agreed. It's actually, in my opinion, doing a tremendous amount of damage to kids. So I feel like he should be equally liable for his lack of understanding in what we're doing. And he should have his own consequences for that on who he's not screening and how he's treating them.
I completely agree. And a lot of it too comes down to a lot of orthodontists just don't know how and aren't trained in how to treat younger kids. I mean, this same individual.
And they don't want to be.
They don't want to be. I've heard him make the comment, like, I can't even get my 5-year-old to take ibuprofen.
So different.
Exactly. It just means you
might
not have.
Why is the 5-year-old taking ibuprofen anyway?
It might just be the skill set of you as a provider, and I'm not saying about this individual. Totally. I don't know his skill set as a clinician. But but there's people out there, like you got a Kevin Boyd who's got 3-year-olds, completely compliant in the chair. So
it's amazing.
It's just, again, I think it's that fear. I think it's being outside your lane and comfort zone. And when you're scared and you're fearful, you don't want, especially if you're looked at on a high level in the profession, you don't want to look like you're doing something wrong. You don't want to look like you're the one that doesn't know how to do this stuff. And if you don't want to do it, it can be really hard for people to say, yeah, I get it. I like just straightening teeth on teenagers or adults or whatever. I'm really not into the real younger kid thing or the early treatment thing. But that's okay. I'm not going to throw shade on it and hate on it. I think anything that you're doing to help a patient, period, that would be a position I would respect. Like, I don't expect everybody to do what I do or what you do at all. Like, it's just not for everybody. Some people I know people have practices that are like 100% adult. Like, they don't even want a kid in the chair. That's
exactly.
fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's the great part about our profession. You can do that. Where I draw the line is when there are people that don't do it, don't learn about it, don't know about it, and try to intimidate those, and then talk about it, intimidate those who are doing it. Scare those who are doing it, and really instill fear into those who are thinking about doing it. So on that, to kind of combat that, what are you doing younger? Because I've been very open that when I was in practice as an orthodontist, for me, 5-6 years old was young. I just didn't get patients referred to me in my office for really anything younger than that. We didn't have a lot of myofunctional therapy in my area. I was a cleft craniofacial orthodontist on a team, so I worked closely with speech and worked on a lot of younger kids in the cleft craniofacial capacity. But in my practice itself, in non-syndromic patients, patients without cleft craniofacial, because I did a lot of patients who were very, very severe in those areas. Outside of that, I didn't have experience in the eruption guidance, in the early myofunctional, in the helping these patients. And I've talked a lot about in the show of the need to, guys like Kevin Boyd, and we went into a lot of this, and Audrey, and the need to go in there earlier. At what age are you starting to do this? And what are you doing for these patients, just generally speaking? And then what are you seeing happen to them with that approach?
So it's just, I mean, I always like to say it starts at birth. So I do frenectomies in the practice for newborn babies if they're having trouble breastfeeding or whatever. So I'm already assessing muscle function and tethered oral tissues. I have a team of people in Houston that help me with that. Like, I'll send to chiropractic care or body work for these little tiny babies. And a lot of the times the moms were like, I thought you were crazy sending me to a chiropractor with my 8-week-old baby, but like, what a difference it has made. So I start really early screening there, and we start habit corrector appliances around age 3. So I tell parents, I mean, it's not that I won't give you one at 2.5, but it's going to be an expensive toy to the kid.
Can you explain habit corrector a little more? Because I know a lot of the community isn't even sure what that is.
So I have one kind of by my desk, but there's lots of different brands of them. This is a blue one. It's got a tongue tab here. Basically, what we are doing with these appliances, and there's many brands. There's MyoBrace, Healthy Start, the Vivos guides, which are my favorite and what we use in tooth pillow the most, but they're getting the muscles off the teeth. Muscles move teeth. Our tongue and lips just dictate the positions of our teeth. And if you're swallowing improperly, like think pacifier, you're pushing in,
sucking
you
in.
will mold. Yes, you'll mold those little kids' jaws. So we get the muscles that are in dysfunction out of the picture, and we redirect their breathing. And I tell patients, I spend lots of times in these consults, my goal with this, yes, you see my before and afters, and it looks like they had braces and they never did, and it was all this glorious thing. But my goal right now is to redirect the muscles and redirect the breathing. And I started my youngest at 3. He had huge tonsils and adenoids. I really thought he was going to have them out. He even got a cavity from him. The dentist's kid got a cavity. I was literally flossing him one day when it chipped off. I mean, literally, it was like I was devastated. And I was like, and his tonsils were huge. He was snoring, he was mouth breathing, everything. And he was 3. And I was like, that's it. I'm getting you in this appliance right now. His older siblings were already in it. They were doing great. And they shrunk. I got him breathing through his nose, and we avoided surgery. Yes. And so that is my goal, is to create healthy habits in the beginning. They're putting it in every night. They're building that habit.
They wear it at night, just nighttime typically?
Yep. On the little babies, they put them in when they go to bed.
And is compliance pretty good?
It is, yeah. That's probably the number one question I would say is how do you get a 3-year-old to wear it? These kids are really easily motivated if you know what motivates them. But my banter to that for doctors who are like, oh, that would never happen. I was like, well, how do you get your kid to take a bath? Like, you just have to do it. Like, you're just going to do it, you know? And
how do you get your kid to put a pacifier in? I mean, right?
We shoved it in first. Let's be honest. Like
that's the thing is, like, if they say they won't put this, that's always been my confusion is people say, oh, a child's not going to keep anything like this in their mouth. It's like, well, they keep a pacifier in. So,
absolutely.
For sure. Confused me.
And I tell the parents, I'm like, it might not be night 1. Who cares? Like with my 3-year-old, it was almost 6 months before he really was just like, it stayed in the whole night. We threw a party. It was so fun. Took him to get a toy. Like, you just got to make it fun. I tell some parents, like, buy whatever toy they want and put it on the top of the fridge, and they don't get it until it stays in all night. They get so excited. So it's not hard. We, the dentists, make it a problem in our head. We're the problem. We're the problem. And we need to be able to communicate well with the parents to know what's normal. Their teeth are probably going to be sore because things are moving. I get really excited when they say that because things look straighter the next time I see them. Like, there's so much that's normal in wearing these. but we're just letting the kids' natural growth do it. It's the greatest thing ever. I'm like, every single child should have one of these because they can do no harm. They're just going to let them breathe through their nose, get their tongue position up, and we start watching what happens. I never tell them they're not going to need expanders or ortho the second phase, whatever. It's just, we need to start here because the ramifications of letting a kid get to 12, 13, 14 as an inability to breathe through their nose and a mouth breather is so much harder.
Yeah.
And we could have done it when they were 6, 7, 8. And the parents that are like truly, and I've treated kids on the spectrum, they do great with it. But I mean, I've treated the most severe kids with breathing and sleep disorders in my state. And I always tell the parents, like, as much as you feel like this is going to be a battle in your mind, because maybe your relationship with the kid right now is difficult and they're exhausted, like whatever's happening to cause this, you have to let them try. So I say, you have to let them try, because you might be so surprised how well this goes and how easy it is. And expanders alone are not going to fix everything that these can do at the muscle level. So, and I know, but I always follow it up with, no problem, I'll glue something in, but this is where we're going to start. Like either way, we're going to get it done, but we got to start here because of how beautiful this can look, you know, whatever. So that's kind of the process in the beginning for how what I tell them about. Now, once we get to older ages, like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I mean, it's like we're using hardware and we're having conversations about what this really looks like, but they always pass through a habit corrector appliances. I'll put it over my expander. I want to make sure that we are forcing nasal breathing as we can up until they grow out of it, you know? And they come in various widths. It's based on Schwartz measurements. When you're into the tooth positioner, 7 through 10, what is that width? They're created to put the kids in a class 1 molar. And while they're growing, oh my gosh, the deep bite and class 2 corrections are never easier than with these. I'm like, I don't want to chase those with other things. Just wear your freaking tooth pillow. I'm like, just put this in so that the rest of this is easier for us.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite of kind of the traditional orthodontic approach, which is you just kind of wait, let them grow, watchful waiting, as we call it, and you let them grow, and then you try to clean it all up when they're older. And I mean, outside of the scope of today, to go into why orthodontists aren't treating younger kids and why the residency programs aren't doing that, I have a lot of times on the show we go into that. That being said, it's the reality, and so they look at anything younger. It doesn't seem, when we're taught like you can go in there, and I think part of it's because we're such good tooth straighteners. We get so good at moving these teeth that we think, well, I can solve that open bite. I can solve that deep bite. I have ways to do this. I can make them class 1. And we don't realize, okay, maybe you can, right? And I could say times where we don't too. There's a lot of those cases, those open bites, or they relapse, right? We get them there and, and they relapse. So that's a big thing. But maybe you can, let's just go with it that in that particular case, you can get the teeth to fit right at the end. What if you didn't have to work that hard? What if you could help the patient grow more naturally? And then a lot of these cases, you're still going to have some little parts of malocclusion, little deep bite, little end on class 2, whatever it is, you're going to have some things there.
Just dial it in.
Dial it in and make it perfect for them. And so it's a mindset change. And I don't know if part of it is that just an orthodontist is just the thought that it would almost devalue us, you know, and I don't know. That's just me thinking this. I've never really heard that at all. Maybe it's like, well, if I can't prove what a great tooth straightener I am because I don't need to do as much tooth straightening, then maybe I'm not as good of an orthodontist. You know, again, just kind of throwing that out there.
You never know.
A lot of this, I think, is psychological on the orthodontist side, as we talked about before, the fear of the change, right? The fear of looking back at your body of work. And maybe there's a fear that if I do this young, I won't have quite the place I have when they're older.
It could be. Oh, exactly.
I have plenty of people that walk in your office for the first time at 12 with horrific malocclusions, and you have to do, and that's not going to go away. But if we can minimize that and help these kids, and then as well as I've talked about many times in my platform is the neurocognitive deficits and the school issues and all of the behavioral issues.
Gosh, these poor babies
on speed
meds,
on med for their ADHD.
For real.
You could save some of these kiddos some of this, and I want to be clear because I have to say this, and I know you'll agree, Kelly's not talking about treating these kids' airways. She's not talking about treating sleep apnea, or she's talking about normalizing anatomy. Was that the correct statement?
Absolutely.
Right? And normalizing physiologic
breathing. Yes. And just the ability to identify muscle dysfunction.
Right.
Like, who knows this better than us? I tell dentists all the time, if you ever say I'm just a dentist again, I'm going to fire you.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we have such an incredible role in the way these kids turn into adults,
Yep.
really, really changing their systemic health forever by starting early, by making sure they breathe through their nose. This is so easy, you know, and it's like, but it is a mindset thing. And I think it stems down. I've asked before, why are y'all so against us starting little? Like, I want to do whatever I can for my own kid. Like, I want whatever I would do for my kids and parents to do for my patients. And I get told insurance, man. I get told it's this whole thing. Ortho's a lifetime benefit. And I'm like, oh, so it's okay to like not do what insurance says in ortho, but we always say don't let insurance dictate your care when it comes to dentistry in general. Like, make it make sense. And so I'm sure there's some part of it's a turf war, I guess. But like, the fact of the matter is these patients are finding this information now. They're looking for providers who will do it.
And how can we get more of that out there? What do you think? Because that's something I need to do a better job with. Is I'm you know, I'm in Gen X, so like I grew up without computers. I went to school where we were all paper charts. So for me, I started my practice day one digital. I've really embraced technology. I just don't love social media. It's a fight for me. I know I need to do better at it. It's going to be a goal for 2025 to be better in that arena. But what do you find is most effective? Because I've got all this content, right? I've got tons of data and content showing what I do for these kids, and I built YouTube videos and CE courses, but I feel like the parents aren't necessarily getting into that arena.
Yeah, they don't see it. They really don't. They're seeing it in their mom groups. They're seeing it on Instagram Reels. I think Facebook is just not as attended to, especially I would say in the young parents now. So the current like 20, 21, 22, 3-year-olds, Instagram and TikTok are seemingly where people are kind of getting their like dose of social media in the evenings. But you got to hire a millennial, whether you want to or not. You got to hire a millennial to do it for you, because their creativity, the ones that are like really in tune to this space, are going to be able to create clips and content that get traction. And I've got lots of help from millennials on my Instagram, because I need them to like put their creativity spin on it and have it be information about something that the parents are seeing. So we've got to get the dental lingo out of it. I got to say, like, is your kid being diagnosed with ADHD? Is there any bedwetting? Hey, is your husband snoring so loud you can't stand it? Like, stuff like that, because that's the terminology that they're going to understand, and get into these. I would say for the guys that are still in private practice and running their practices, it's like, get into your community Facebook groups as much as you can. Doesn't have to be you. It was me. The height of my burnout, unfortunately, it was me that was in those, and I removed myself, and now I've got other people in there for me, because I can't manage it. I can't be everything for everybody all at once, you know? And so, but that will absolutely gain traction, because if you're in the right demographic of the ages of somebody who has a 3-year-old kid right now, which we don't have 3-year-old kids anymore, like in my house, right? You need to be like, that's the group of people. So you need an in, whether it's like a staff member that's like, you know, in the neighborhood Facebook page or whatever. But that's the kind of content that we're finding is getting a lot of traction. ADHD tends to be my highest content ratings right now when we're talking about behavior. The tooth grinding and bedwetting stuff is good too, but that one seems to be, I think, the highest prescribed medication right now for that age group. And like,
they approved it. I think it's been approved starting at 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's terrific. So, I mean, it's terrific.
Pretty scary.
And that's what I wish you and I could change. I mean, more than anything else, I'm like, if we could have some legislature that said a child would not be prescribed this without a sleep study, I would be forever grateful, because we know that the misdiagnosis rate is so high of sleep disorder breathing versus true ADHD. And the kids I see that are already medicated have massively underdeveloped jaws and 9mm overjets and tongue ties. And it's like the saddest thing you see by the time they find a dentist. The parents are not thinking dentist when they're dealing with this stuff. Point. No, and that's what we need to change.
They're not. And again, you get back to where we started before, and then I'll kind of start to wrap up with, I want to hear that. I want to dive deeper into the mom side of things to close out. But before I do that, and I want to talk about the AADSM statement. I said I'd revisit that, and then
please do tell me which one.
But before I do that, the last thing I'll kind of say, and maybe this is a bit flippant, but if we're going to make an argument about standard of care, so we're okay with the standard of care being giving speed to 2-year-olds, right? That's okay, right? That
Yes.
we're going to make it like that, right? That's standard of care, right? But going in and trying to help these kids' faces grow better, however you do it. I'm not even saying like it has to be one technique or approach, but the concept of treating kids younger is being so vilified in a lot of people in the orthodontic profession. But those same people are not. I've never heard them come out adamantly saying that these kids shouldn't be given speed when they're 2 years old to help their ADHD symptoms. So I think we need
Dude,
to have
amen.
a really
Thank
hard
you for
talk
saying
about
that.
that and say, what are we doing? And we're always do no harm. Oh, but if you look at what is being done for these kids and their families, just talk to some of these while we're building ways to get more research out there. We can't let all these kids just suffer and say, oh, well, they say to
100%.
the
Oh my
mom or
gosh.
say, imagine
Yes.
saying to your
Oh my gosh.
3-year-old, looking at your husband and saying, Kyle, I'm sorry. There's not much we're going to be able to do here. I think ultimately, we're just going to have to kind of give him some drugs and go with it and get him to the ENT and have him some invasive surgery and all that. I don't think we can try anything minimally invasive. I mean, stop
Yeah.
and think about that. So, because it's not the standard of care, which again, we talked about the misnomer that is the argument of standard of care anyway. So I'll leave that
Right.
part at that. And I appreciate your honesty on it. Before we jump into the mom side, I want to just go the AADSM you'd referenced. And that's the two big things I face online are the AAO white paper, the 2019 white paper, and
Yes.
the AADSM statement, and I came out end of 23, early 24, maybe early 24, about this whole, well, I'll visit the white paper. We won't get too much into, but the big thing I have with the white paper, which is what a lot of these orthodontists will say, oh, look at the 2019 white paper. All they talk about is obstructive sleep apnea. They don't talk about anything on the spectrum of breathing disorders. They don't talk about pediatric sleep disordered breathing in that context. They don't talk about all the ramifications of airway and the fact that their big thing is orthodontists shouldn't treat airway. Okay, well, we're not saying we should. Dentists shouldn't treat airway. Well, we're not saying we should. What we're saying is that we have a role to detect these problems, work with our medical colleagues if and when needed to address their area, and then provide evidence-based treatment to go in and help normalize the anatomy. That's what the ADA said in 2017.
Absolutely.
That was their position statement. The ADA guidelines. So any orthodontist out there who is nervous about this, I just want to say, instead of when people quote the 2019 AAO paper, quote the ADA position statement from 2017, which preceded it, which clearly doesn't put an age on anything. It says your job as a clinician, every dentist, is to detect problems associated to airway that are present, work with medical colleagues as needed, and provide evidence-based orthodontic dental treatment to be able to help these patients and address the problem, period. So you're good. So at that point, you're following the ADA guidelines. And if anybody questions you and says it's not standard of care, you can say, you know what, I'm following the ADA guidelines and I'm helping my patients.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay. The AADSMs was just talking about monotherapies. So they were saying their position paper came out and said, well, none of these things, expansion or tongue tie releases or mandibular advancement devices or habit correctors, or all of these things in and of themselves. So they're talking about these not being effective as monotherapies, meaning if you just throw one at a particular patient, right. Let's take a 7-year-old child walks in and, you're like, oh, this patient's not breathing through their nose and they've got these other issues and I'm just going to put an expander in and fix it. Well, I don't know who's making that argument that's
nobody. It's nobody that knows what they're doing anyway.
Thank you. Nobody that knows what they're doing. We don't look at this as a monotherapy. And a lot of the literature says, oh, which is better? Adenoid tonsillectomy or expansion? Which one does better? And those studies are just bogus to me because maybe, and David McIntosh did a great job addressing this too, but maybe in the patient who got the tonsils and adenoids out, they actually needed it. And the patient who got the expander, they did. And converse could be true too. Maybe the patient with the tonsils and adenoids out really wasn't what they needed. Maybe that patient needed the expansion and vice versa. So, or maybe they needed to see the allergist, right? Maybe it was a nasal passageway obstruction issue. Maybe it was a central issue and it was a central sleep issue. Totally. So when you look at the data, I just caution everybody to just be more critical of it and don't just take when they say like monotherapies don't work or the American Academy of Dental Sleep
Medicine. I shouldn't do it.
Right. It just be smarter than that, be better than that. Look at the whole body of data, take the time to diagnose your patients, understand what you're dealing with, and then have the tools in your toolbox to be able to apply multiple of those therapies of evidence-based treatment to do it. I let you.
Agreed.
comment
Agreed.
on
Yeah.
that if
I
you want.
always tell my patients this is not the Kalli show. I know that you guys are so excited and I'm here and you're seeing me and we're going to do all this, but I am going to pull in a team of people if I need
Yes.
to, because this is not a one size fits all treatment.
Yes.
And I think that's really important for them to understand that while I can handle the jaw growth and development in the part that I need, if there's other things going on, we're going to need more input, and they need to understand that it's multifaceted
Yeah.
and
Beautifully said.
collaborative.
Beautifully said. I love that. That's such a great point. I'm glad we were able to get that in about it being collaborative, because it really is.
Yeah.
It's not the Mike show or the Kalli show or the David show from, David McIntyre. He was saying
Right.
the same thing. This is a team. Like, we all need to work together. So,
True.
so to close up, let's talk about, how do you do what you do? You've said you can't be everything to everybody, and it's so true. Yet us type A's, driven, right? I mean, it's a constant battle to not try to be everything to everybody. And I can say, I've fought that fight my whole life. It's very hard to resist what's in our DNA that way and how we're wired, because it's just how our brains are wired. Add to that, you're very good at what you do and you're very successful.
Thank you.
So a lot of people demand your services, your time, and your attention. But you also have a husband and 3 little kiddos that you have to, or not little anymore, young kiddos that you
little
have to,
enough, yeah,
you have to tend to, and plus you have the responsibilities we all have of day-to-day life. So how do you do it?
Thank you. Yeah, in the beginning, when you get out of school, you're riddled with debt and you have all these bills to pay, and it's just work, 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 work. And at the same time, like you said, you're trying to build a family. You're behind on your friends. You come up for air and you're like, hey, anybody want to have dinner? Like, I don't have a test tomorrow. And, we can dig our own holes big time for ourselves. And I think you do have to work on yourself and you have to work on your practice to get to a position where you can pay the bills. You are going to have that boots on the ground, sort of up all night worried about stuff in the beginning. I think any business owner, it would be wrong to tell you that there's ways to avoid that, because there's plenty of books, there's plenty of self-help things that you can do, but in the beginning, you're going to have to work hard. But I got to a point where I had created this monster around myself that it was really just me that was able to manage what was going on in our practice, because I was the one with the sleep training, and I was turning my location into a massive family practice with a huge focus on sleep apnea. And for pediatrics, just growth and development. And I experienced a tremendous, I told you the first year I did it, I did 250 cases. Well, you continue to add on to that and add on to that and add on to that. All of a sudden, like,
feels
you can't miss work.
It feels exponential.
I couldn't miss work. I couldn't be sick. Because there would be 30 or 40 people they would have to reschedule that day. And then where are they supposed to go when you're 3 or 4 months booked out? You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And with the doctors that I mentor, I'm always saying, like, are you in a position to bring on somebody? Because I know the ones in my group that are very good communicators, and I see where they are right now. I see how many cases they're starting, and I know what next year is going to feel like. And how can I help them to prevent that? So, because I learned it the hard way. I had such moments in 2021 where I was away speaking. I was making more money than I ever had in my life. I had more patients than I could handle, and was really, feeling myself and popular, and I enjoyed it tremendously. But you can start to not enjoy what you're the best at and what your calling is when you have limited resources and time. And I think deciding as an individual practice owner, whoever, your 2 most valuable assets are your time and attention. And it takes a tremendous amount of strength to say no and to refocus. What is your time and attention going to be on? Is it going to be scrolling social media at night, or are you going to stay up and work on your business and work on yourself? I had conversations with my parents and Kyle, my husband, in 2021 around wanting to stop. I deleted my Facebook in 2021 for 18 months because I had immersed myself into these mom groups that built me. And to the point where I was getting messages at 9 o'clock at night about Zoom whitening that I thought I had to answer. And while I loved where that period of time got me, as far as them feeling attended to and loved and like easy access to me, it had to stop. And I found a book I mean, literally, I remember this the day of just crying and telling my dad and Kyle, I'm not doing this anymore. You guys need to find somebody else to see these patients.
Mm.
I don't want to fill another tooth. I don't want to do anything. And my job wasn't the problem.
Mm.
And for anybody going through this, you think you can identify like the problem. If this went away, I'm good. Like if I never saw another patient, I'm good. It has nothing to do with your job. It has to do with your mindset.
Yeah.
How I was perceiving threats and what I felt like had in my fight or flight was off the charts.
Yep.
And I was just on Amazon Googling burnout. I was like, there's got to be a book. And we had a practice manager, like a group that helps your practice and stuff that my dad and Kyle were dealing with at the time. And they had somebody I could talk to. And I got on with this dentist who had left the chair a couple of times. So the first two unsuccessfully, because I was thinking I got to leave the chair. Like I got to figure out, something else. And I asked him, have you read any books about burnout? And he said, no, I really haven't found anything good yet. We had one call. And it was just, I needed a lot. I was like, I'm on a cliff here, y'all. Like, this is a problem. And I found a book called The 7E Solutions to Burnout. And it was written by Dr. Sharon Grossman. And she's a psychologist or psychiatrist, and had helped people in every facet of life, like CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies and doctors and lawyers and everybody's mindset. There was a common theme for how she got people out of the rut. And I don't even know if she's popular enough, like truly, because it took me about a year. I read her book slowly. It's a workbook. It's a book where you're going to sit down, do a chapter and fill out your problems and fill out what your brain is saying to you, which is not true. And it changed the way I was able to cope. And I did cut a day from the chair. I took Tuesdays was my day. Tuesdays became, I would go to work on Mondays. Tuesdays, the kids would be in school and I would sit in this room and I would read and work on myself and my leadership, because I knew that the rate limiting factor for my ability to continue to help people was me. And if anybody gets anything out of that, it's just, you've got to work on yourself. You need to know things are going to be okay. And you've got to work on your leadership, but you got to take care of you and switch your mindset, and it will help you so much. So.
That's amazing. I really, and if everybody, that's 3 years ago that you were in that spot.
Yeah.
So if it was 10, say, well, time that is truly amazing. And as somebody,
the best thing I ever did for myself.
Wow. I give you so much credit. I mean, for someone who's faced burnout and been there with the demands of life and family and practice, and sometimes, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, we become victims of our own success. We become victims of being good, and you don't really talk about it like that, because it's like, right. But no, that's a fact. When you're, whether it's in academia or clinicians or sports or
it doesn't matter.
Hollywood, like when you're really good, there's demands that get put upon you, and then the expectations rise. And then those the weight of those expectations and demands can really be heavy, and you start to not like the things you liked. And I'm at a different type of journey than you, obviously, but around the exact same time, which is absolutely crazy. We went on similar journeys, and I decided I need to refocus on my professional side into being an educator in the second half of my career, and made the shift away from my practice to going all in on this. And it was a different journey that I went on, but one that I knew I needed to do and and just like you now, just so happy to be where I'm at in this arena. And love what I'm doing now. I mean, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I mean,
same.
Right. And you would, right. I mean, think about how life is and what we're called to do and how we go on these journeys. So I just really acknowledge you for saying that and being so open and sharing your failures and your challenges. That is not easy to do. And talking about the challenges you face and also just your passion, your desire to learn. That's one common theme that's become really clear through today's talk, is you're always trying to learn and be better and grow and be one step better. And you walk that, you live it clearly. Your patients get that, your team, the respect you have. And in a very short period of time, you've become a big thought leader in this arena. And
thank you.
Yeah, you deserve a lot of credit.
Well, it's an honor to be on here with you, man. I'm so excited. I hope we'll be at some similar conferences or something this year, because we gotta yell.
Yes.
So that people start listening to us.
Are you going to Winds of Change in St. Louis? It's Maz Mashari
What
and
month
Reza
is
Motorhead.
that?
It's in January. It's like the 3rd, it's like the 17th, 16th, 18th.
I really
17th,
want
18th.
to. I don't think I have a flight booked for it yet, but I need to Google it. I'll be at the WDSS meeting in November though next week. I don't know if you guys if you'll be there.
I can't make it. I know it's going to be
Dang
such a good meeting.
it.
I
Yeah.
know. I know.
Yeah.
It's about actually right about when this one releases. That when this is coming live, people will hear that. I think it's like right after that it'll be.
Okay.
But yeah,
No
I'm
problem. Well,
bummed
our
about
paths
that
will
one.
cross, but
They
I'm
will.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a
No.
big fan and I appreciate you having me on. It means a lot.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for
Dr.
sure.
Kalli Hale, it's been an absolute pleasure just getting to know you better. And again, thanks so much for
Absolutely.
sharing so much with the audience.
Yes, thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Doc Podcast. Be sure to visit theorthocoach.com to get access to ADA CERP recognized CE courses or to schedule a private one-on-one coaching session with me. Also, if you know of someone who would make a great guest for this show, or if you'd like to be a guest yourself, please email me at drmike@theorthocoach.com. And be sure to join the Doc community on Facebook for more great content. Thanks so much for listening. And always remember, you have been blessed with the ability to do amazing things.